Hey everybody, welcome to SEL Day and our session, Different Families, Great Results, in our SEL Day webinar, Parents Equip Our Kids. It's a big day on SEL Day here. I just found out that both California Governor Newsom and the President and First Lady have declared today SEL Day. So it's great to have that sort of recognition. For everybody just joining us, I'm Matthew Spohr, the Director of Marketing for nonprofit Equip Our Kids, which advocates for social emotional learning in schools and homes. People on Zoom, you can submit questions in the chat box. Everybody feel free, please, to live post your reactions to this session on your favorite social media platform and use the hashtag SEL Day. To help get SEL in more schools, you can text the word equip to 707070 and make a donation. We're going to get right into this session, which is moderated by Michael Wilson, a dad and outreach coordinator for the Harris County Department of Education in Houston. And he'll be interviewing mom and SEL expert, Dr. Lorea Martinez, and dad, Michael Strambler. So Michael Wilson, please start us off.
Thank you, Matt. Welcome to this session concerning different families, great research. Parents from different regions and ethnic backgrounds share their children's success with SEL at school. It is my pleasure to host this session with our presenters, Dr. Lorea Martinez, a faculty member at Columbia University Teachers College, and Dr. Michael Strambler, associate professor at Yale University School of Medicine. First, I want to welcome the both of you and thank you for presenting on today's webinar.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
So let's get this session started. Dr. Martinez, can you share a short story about a time when SEL helped you to support yourself or your child?
Sure, you are getting us started with a really good question. So I'm a mom, which is one of my favorite roles in my life. I have two girls, a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. And this story is about soccer. So my oldest daughter plays soccer, and very recently she had the finals for a competition. And the day before, I could tell that she was, very fidgety, very nervous, anxious about the game. And I asked her about it, and she didn't want to talk about it. She said, no, if I talk about it, I'm going to get more nervous. So mom, kind of like, leave me alone. But I managed to sit down with her and we had a conversation, and I said, well, what is it that makes you nervous about the game? And then she started telling me that she didn't want to let her team down, that she really wanted to do a good job. So clearly this was a very important game for her, not only just for herself as a player, but also she wanted to do a good job for her team. And then we, I tried to move on the conversation, and I asked her to imagine, well, if you are like having the best game, like how would you feel? And we talked about some of those feelings, and she said, well, I would feel very proud and I would feel excited. And it was a powerful moment to see how we can use our emotions, how we can transform them and connect not only with what we are experiencing in the moment, and be able to name those feelings clearly and understand why we are feeling that way, but also that there's a space for other emotions. If we think about having that imaginary, to have that picture in our head of how would things go if they go the way that we want. So anyway, that's a story that illustrates the importance of talking about feelings with our kids and the power that it has to really be specific and name those feelings and understand why we have them.
Dr. Strambler, what SEL approaches do you use with your children to help them understand and appreciate the differences in others and different viewpoints?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Mike. And so first of all, just to give a little bit of more background about me, I'm a father of a 9-year-old boy. And it's great to be able to be here today to share my perspective as a parent. I talk about SEL a lot, but I'm often talking about SEL from the perspective of someone who does research in that space. So it's nice to be able to have an opportunity to talk about this from a different perspective. So this question about how to support students and kids appreciation of difference is a really important one to us and our family. Um, I recently wrote an op-ed on this topic about the connection between SEL and the appreciation of difference. And in that in that op-ed, I hit on 4 different points. One of the reasons why people sometimes have a hard time appreciating difference is because of the assumptions we bring to situations when we encounter difference, whether it's a difference in how someone looks or how someone thinks or how they behave. We can often make assumptions that this difference, because it's so foreign to us, is wrong, or there's something unhealthy or maladaptive about this difference. This is often an assumption that sometimes we bring to situations that seem foreign to us. And so one of the things I pointed out, and this is one of the things I try to emphasize with my son, is that now we need to sometimes check our own assumptions about difference, and to use reason sometimes over assumptions. So it's like we can question people who maybe present a point of view that is different from ours. We can question our own point of view. How did I arrive at this conclusion? How did I arrive at this assumption? Is there some validity to it? Does it seem to align with reality? Is there evidence to support it? This is one of the key things I like to emphasize with my son, is to reason through these things when they arrive, especially when they're around difference. The other lesson I try to teach has to do with appreciating just other cultures in general. It's a big world out there. It's good to get outside of your own immediate setting and to explore how other people think and behave and the different things that they value. Welcoming disagreement is a really important SEL related strategy that we emphasize in our house as well. Disagreement can often feel can often be a negative. It can also often be associated with a negative emotion. We try to emphasize how someone disagreeing with us gives us an opportunity, again, to evaluate our own point of view and potentially improve the way we think about any given topic. So disagreement presents a lot of opportunities, even when it presents some degree of discomfort. And there's one kind of meta point on this, is that improving ourselves is a lifelong journey, and we should never stop trying to improve the way we think about ourselves, the way we think about the world, and therefore exposing ourselves to different points of view is important for being on that journey.
This next question is for the both of you. In your opinion, what are some ways for parents to advocate for SEL in their children's school if the school is not teaching SEL at this point? And if the school is using or teaching SEL concepts, have you noticed any changes in your child's behavior?
Yeah, thank you, Mike, for that question. I think that first, I would say that we cannot make assumptions, right? Like if we don't have that information of what our children's school is doing, the first step would be to really approach the teacher, approach the principal, and ask, how are you, how's the school responding to students' social and emotional needs? And in the past, I've been in the SEL field for almost 10 years. And in the past, what we realized is that schools were doing SEL, but they were not calling it SEL, right? So SEL sometimes has a different name in different contexts in different schools. So we need to be specific about like, oh, how are you supporting kids to be able to manage their emotions? Or when kids are having a hard time focusing in class, what are some strategies you are using, right? All of those things are part of the SEL field. Some schools call it corrected education, maybe they call it, that it's integrated into their system of supports, but it's just asking the question as a parent, how are you supporting the kids? How are you supporting my child? And then especially if you are seeing as a parent that maybe your kid is struggling with specific aspects or you're having a hard time at home, and we see that happening a lot with the pandemic, and you might know many teachers that are sharing how kids are displaying behaviors that maybe they were expecting in younger kids. So we are really seeing a lot of struggles with student behavior right now as a result of the pandemic and all the trauma and the stress that students have been facing. So having that conversation with the school and seeing how are they supporting the students, I think it's a very important part. And then for myself, I'm very fortunate that my girls go to a school where SEL is fully integrated into the curriculum, and teachers spend time teaching the concepts explicitly during their morning meeting, but also it is reinforced in many of the activities that they do during the day in their academic subjects. And I can tell you a story about my kids. One of the concepts that they teach at school is I statements. And for the listeners that have more than one kid at home, you know that like siblings and conflicts between siblings is one of the things that, drive us nuts as parents. And it happens like every day, many times. So for my girls, especially when my youngest started in elementary school, she's now in first grade, and she learned to use I statements. I noticed that when they were having conflicts, instead of saying, you took my toy, or you did this, and this is your fault, that they were able to say, I feel upset because you took my toy away, or I would like you to, I need you to respect my books. Like that's something my oldest daughter would say. So that's a big difference in terms of how the kids are interacting with each other without my intervention. Of course, there are times when as a mom, I have to, kind of like help mediate those conflicts. But the fact that the kids can do this on their own and that they can have those conflicts and being able to solve them, I think it's a huge improvement and something that I have to be grateful to the school for very intentionally teaching those I statements so the kids can have those conflicts and solve the conflicts on their own.
So this is for both of us, right? This question?
Yes.
So everything she said, so everything she said, especially that part about first getting clarity around actually what's being done in your school and or district, because as Lorea mentioned, this SEL goes by many names. SEL is not the only term that's being used to foster the kinds of student skills that SEL is intended to foster. So I think it's good to first find out the extent to which these things are being practiced in your school. But if you were to find out that there doesn't seem to be any kind of SEL practices being implemented, or it's not to your satisfaction, I think one of the ways to advocate for this to be implemented is through school boards. So I'm a school board member, and one of the things that we take very seriously is public comment from the other community members about what they think we need to make improvements on in our school, on our school district. So I think attending school boards and voicing your interest in an SEL and asking the school board to respond to any inquiry you might have about the extent to which SEL is being implemented and what the plans are for SEL implementation is a really effective way of advocating for this, for SEL. And one way of doing that is by also looking for any kind of subcommittees that might exist within your school or school district for which parents might be able to participate. So sometimes these subcommittees are, sometimes they're SEL subcommittees, but sometimes they're called names that are related to SEL, like, you know, you might have a mental health subcommittee, you might have a culture and community subcommittee, social or emotional well-being committee, something like that, to look for subcommittees within school boards that might be focused on an SEL related topic. That could give you another point of entry to raising some of your concerns and or interests.
Before we go to our Q&A session, can you both provide our audience with resources to help them on their SEL journey?
Sure. So I publish a guide for educators to implement SEL last February. It's called Teaching with the Heart in Mind. And I've shared that book with many parents as well, and they have found it to be helpful to understand what SEL is. And it goes into depth about 5 essential social emotional skills, what they mean, and what are some of the things that we can do to cultivate those skills. So I would recommend that resource. And the first chapter of the book is currently available for free on my website. So if you want to take a sneak peek, that resource is available for you as well.
So I have not written a book yet. I am working on one with a couple of co-editors. Sarah Rim Kaufman is one of them, and Kim Schoenert-Reichel is the other. And we have a book coming out sometime this year called SEL in Action. So you can keep an eye out for that as a resource. I recently wrote an op-ed, as I mentioned, regarding the connection between SEL and diversity / DEI efforts. That's at The Hill, if you want to look at that. And then in general, I think CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, that website, that organization has a ton of information about what SEL is, what it looks like, how programs, different SEL programs are rated. There's a wealth of resources there that I could recommend.
Okay, now we'll go to our Q&A. The first question is, what kind of assessment can parents request from their schools to get additional support?
What kind of assessment can they request? Yeah, I'm not sure if this person means like a formal assessment or just information from the district, but I would start, as Lorea and I mentioned, by just trying to get some information from the district about the extent to which SEL is being implemented. if you have concerns about your child, your individual child, and feel like an assessment might need to be utilized to assess your child, it's hard to recommend any one assessment here. It's usually going to be a battery of assessments, and I would want to leave that decision up to a professional within the school, a psychologist or social worker who does those kinds of assessments at the school. So if it's about that, that's what I would recommend. If it's about an individual child, you have some concerns about social emotional challenges, I would recommend engaging the social worker or psychologist or whatever that team of mental health related workers is called at your school. And if it's about assessing the extent to which SEL is being implemented in your school or district, I would raise that as an inquiry through the means that Lorea and I mentioned.
This next question is, how and what are some ways parents can talk with educators about SEL?
Yeah, I think that it starts with just using our everyday language, like the things that concern us as parents. So if you may have concerns about your child, or you see that your child could use additional development in a certain area with a certain skill, that's always the place to start, right? To start with your child, and to approach the conversation as a partnership. I think that many times we forget that teachers and parents, we are on the same board. Our goals are similar. We want to have healthy, happy, and productive kids, right? We want them to be able to fulfill their greatest potential. But I know that as a parent, if you are feeling threatened or you are feeling like the school is not doing enough for your child, you might want to, go and fight the good fight. But I think that if we approach the conversation from a place of commonalities, what are some of the things that the school is doing? What is my perspective as a parent, and try to find that common ground. That's always a better place to start the conversation and see what is the school's perspective. And again, sometimes you have to do a little bit of digging. Unfortunately, sometimes it's not clear from the parent perspective what is being done at the school, or what are those groups, those committees, those structures that are leading this work. But it always starts with a conversation with the teacher from a place of collaboration. How can I be helpful as a parent to reinforce some of the things that you are doing in the classroom? I think that that's always a good place of connection. And it also allows the parent to get to know the teacher better, right? I think that one of the things that we have experienced during the pandemic is this isolation, right? We are not able as parents to go, at least in my children's school, I'm not able to go onto campus, right? So, and all the activities, all the social gatherings that we had been canceled. So you might feel that sense of isolation where you don't have that communication. But I think that sometimes as we parents have to be that first step to build that bridge and cross that bridge, to initiate that conversation from a place of collaboration and wanting to do this together as a team.
I think sometimes, when parents get their child's report card, they look at the academic performance and maybe just skim over the conduct performance. And it's really important to also examine the conduct and the conduct grade, and talk to educators if that grade is not up to par. What is the school doing to help their student get up to par? Before we go, I want to ask you, do you have any advice or recommendations right now? There's so many sensitive issues that are occurring today, which can cause anxiety in the household. How can family members use SEL techniques to help their children handle these issues?
Michael, can you, when you were raising certain issues, can you give me an example of what you're referring to there?
Yeah, for example, we have the war in Ukraine currently going on. We had the quarantine, which changed everybody's normal way of doing things. And then people have different opinions on should you wear a mask, should you not wear a mask. With social media, there's so much information that's out there that students and kids have access to. And so just what are some things that we can do so kids can filter out, what's some accurate information versus some opinions?
Yeah, yeah, it's a big question, but a really important one. I think one of the most important things one can do is to create regular routines for being able to discuss these kinds of things. So one of the things that we do, for example, is we really make an effort to have dinner together as a family every night. And sometimes that can't happen if I'm working late or my wife is working late or something, or we have a late meeting. But for the most part, we're able to do that. And I know not everyone is able to do that, but it doesn't have to be dinner. Dinner is a nice time to be able to have some of these conversations. And so when we're at dinner, sometimes, for example, we'll do a two good things, two bad things kind of a thing at the table, or we'll each go around and say two good things and two bad things that happened. But that can be broadened to just talking about other things that are on kids' minds, on our minds, that are either concerning to us or of interest to us. That creates the space to be able to discuss these matters, to understand what's on their minds and respond to them. It also tends to happen for us at nighttime, like right before our son is going to bed. Everything comes out, and so we have a lot of those conversations, like at bed tuck-in time. But I think trying to establish a regular routine where that's the expectation, where during this time, this is a time dedicated to us to talk about matters that we care about, are interested about, or worried about.
Yeah,
Dr. Martinez?
Yeah, what I want to add is that emotions are contagious. So the kids really mimic our emotional state as parents. So I think that our ability as adults to navigate our own stress levels, to be able to stay, to find that place of calm where we can interact with our children in constructive ways. And that doesn't mean that we don't get upset, that we are not anxious, that we are not stressed, but that when we are interacting with our kids, it's okay to name it also and to say, mom is really stressed because I had a busy day and I have to take you to soccer and dinner. I don't even know what I'm going to make for dinner. I think that naming those things is so important because we are normalizing for our children that emotions happen, right? They are part of being a human. But again, like our effort is to try to, go down to a place where we are really in control of our behaviors, where we are not overreacting to different situations. And I think the more we can either one, go through that process, right? Like to regulate our emotions, and also to make it explicit for our kids. They can see that having all those emotions is normal. They don't need to hide them, right? And at the same time, there are all these strategies that we can use in order to navigate, to regulate our emotions. So again, I think that in SEL and parenting, the modeling we do for our kids, it's such an important part of being a parent, and our kids are watching. all the time, right? Even when we are not intentionally teaching, they are watching, they are learning from our behavior, which is like a very high place to go, right? We have real high expectations, but at the same time, I think that intentionality, being able to have that in mind, and being honest when we are not able to follow through, acknowledging that we also make mistakes and owning up to those. I think those are important things that we can do to maintain a healthy home and a healthy life with our families.
These are some very difficult times. I think the word war, I have teenage daughters, and for my youngest, who is 13, one day she asked me, it's like, "Oh, we going to war?" And definitely, you try to reassure that there are some things we can't control, but at the same time, it's really interesting to, do some research, learn some different things of what's actually going on, and then what can you do to make the world a little bit of a better place. So, you know, I think being able to be aware of how your feelings are, and then the same as, how they're responding to it and responding appropriately is very key. Do y'all have any final comments before we go, particularly on what are different ways to teach SEL at home?
Lorea, do you want to take that, or you want me to, or can we both take that? Or
Yes, I'm sorry. You both can take that.
I'll let you start, Lorea.
Okay. Yeah, I think that I want to emphasize our work with ourselves. I think that many times when we think about SEL, we think about what our kids need. And we don't think as much about what we can do as adults in our modeling. So I think that if you can only do one thing, if as a parent you are choosing to do one thing for your kids, I think that the most important thing that you can do is to model these skills for your kids. And that means that you are paying attention to how you are regulating your emotions, how you are able to connect with the feelings of your kids, how you're applying that empathy, how you are, cultivating relationships in your life. All those things, how you model those skills for your kids is very important. And I think there's not a one tool that you can use. I think that every single day it's an opportunity to do that modeling for our kids. We're gonna have days when we do a better job than others. But again, I think that is that intentionality and being able to express what we are feeling to our kids, and being able to verbalize what are the strategies that we use in order to handle the everyday situations that we have in life. And there's something else that is very important in my house, and something that I remind myself every day, which is to look at my kids with that unconditional love, and to remind myself that the next day is an opportunity to start again. So if you are feeling defeated, if you are feeling like you are not doing enough as a parent, know that tomorrow it brings another opportunity to try again, right? Our kids are there and we are there for them. But I think that if we hold that relationship sacred, and we hold that space sacred to be with our kids, and to know that as humans we're going to make mistakes, but we have that opportunity to try again. I think those are very important aspects of bringing SEL and living SEL in our families.
I would agree with that, the modeling especially is really important. If there's one thing to focus on, it would be that. One of the things that I deliberately do is to share with my son when I'm struggling, and how I'm dealing with that. I want to try to normalize that for him, that this is something life is hard, and we're all struggling in various ways to improve upon ourselves and cope, get through challenges we encounter throughout life. We have this mantra that everyone's working on something. So even if you think someone is great at say math, and you see him or her just excelling beyond the way you're able to excel, that person might seem perfect to you, but just know that that person also has limitations and weaknesses, maybe different than the ones you have, but they have them, and we're all in this boat of trying to make it through and improve upon ourselves. And so I like, when I've had, when we're at the table, we're doing the two good things and two bad things, I try to be really honest with them about the struggles that I've had throughout the day, the insecurities I have, where I felt like I failed, and how I'm going to address that going forward. So and kids, as I think many of the people watching this will know, pay far more attention to what you're doing than what you're actually telling them.
Dr. Strambler, we have a question real quick regarding interfacing with school boards. What recommendation do you have for people, especially those that aren't used to talking to school boards? It could be a little intimidating. What recommendations do you have for parents that want to share their thoughts with a school board member?
So there are a few different options you have. I agree that it can, for some, it might feel a bit intimidating to approach a board. Just know that in most cases, school boards really take comments from the community very seriously. I know I do, our board does. So you have a few options. One would be to, if you don't feel comfortable making a public comment, you can just email whoever the secretary is for the board, and that email will be sent to the rest of the board. It will be included in public comment typically, but you won't need to actually read that comment at a board meeting if you feel uncomfortable with that. The other option would be to actually read your statement if you feel more comfortable doing that at a board meeting. So the way to find out how that's done would be to email someone from your board, probably the secretary for your board or the board chair, and ask, how does public comment work? And usually public comment is like something like 3 minutes long. You have an opportunity to share a message, a point of view at an actual board meeting. Usually it's at the beginning, sometimes it's at the end, sometimes at the beginning and end of a board meeting. And then the other way would be to seek out, if you know anyone who's on your board, to seek them out and have a conversation with the board member. The board member would likely, the board member, him or herself, can't make a decision on their own. The board is a body that needs to make a decision, but that person would be able to relay some of your concerns to the rest of the school board. So those are some options depending on your level of comfort of engaging a board.
Well, Dr. Martinez and Dr. Strambler, we appreciate so much the advice, the expertise that you shared with us. And we do definitely want to wish you both a great SEL day.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts?
Well, I would say today's SEL Day, right, is a day that we celebrate and honor all the work that is being done to help kids and adults develop social emotional skills. And I would say we all can do something to contribute to this cause. So if you are on social media sharing a post, if you work in an organization and you can do a small event to honor SEL, the work that we do with our kids at home, any small act counts to make sure that we are developing these important skills in ourselves and in our kids and youth. in our communities. So today is a day for action and celebration, and I hope you will all join us in this work.
I would say that some of the closing remarks would be to sort of things one can do to support these things in one's home is to establish routines around this in the house, and to continue to develop these skills in yourself as a parent, and model them for your child.
Well, again, thank you both for sharing your thoughts on SEL, and I do definitely wish you and everyone in this session a great SEL day. I'm going to throw it back to Matt.
Great. Thank you to Dr. Martinez and to both Michaels for sharing your insights. That was really great, especially the very valuable information about interfacing with school boards. That's certainly something that parents can do to try and make this a reality in their schools. Remember, you can always find parent-friendly information on SEL at EQuipOurKids.org. There we've got toolkits that are specifically designed to help you in your parenting at home. And we also have a toolkit for how you can talk with your school about social emotional learning. We know this is a big deal. As I shared at the top of the segment, we now have proclamations from the President and First Lady and from California's Governor Gavin Newsom declaring this SEL Day. I know they join other states and municipalities around the country with those proclamations. It's also following on the heels of some very big proclamations from organizations like the Children's Hospital Association, that's it, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, both declared youth mental health alerts at the end of last year. The US Surgeon General also issued a very major advisory at the end of last year about youth mental health, which makes youth mental health on par with things like youth smoking, youth violence, addiction, exercise and obesity. It's a very important issue, and SEL can be a great anecdote to solving some of these youth mental health crises that we have. So that's some of the bigger background behind why we're doing SEL Day today. We'd like to make SEL Day every day. So hopefully, as Dr. Martinez encouraged you to do, get on social media, be active, spread the word. I also know at the bottom of the screen, it says you can text EQuip to 707070 and support this very vital activity to help our kids. Now is a great time to really pitch in for kids around the world. So with that, we're going to wrap it up and stay tuned for our next segment, A Psychologist's Perspective, and we'll be back.